All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is just before 5 p.m., and it is Thursday, June 27th, if I haven't said that already. Just watching a couple headlines on the tape. Man, there's a lot of stuff going on today. I thought during the session, the regular trading session, there was a lot of stuff to focus on and a lot of movers today. But a lot of headlines after the close today, too, as well as a couple earnings movers. So we'll hit those first, and then we'll talk about today's price action. But it sounds like Johnny Ive to depart from Apple, form independent company. I thought that might have been in the works, but maybe it just wasn't official yet. And then the other news is, I would say, pretty interesting is all the banks. Not only did they pass the second round of the stress tests, but they're also announcing a lot of buybacks. So I have Bank of America up here. They announced 30. I don't know why they just didn't round up here. 31. Let's call it $31 billion of shares. Goldman Sachs $7 billion. Citi to buy 17.1 billion of shares. Morgan Stanley to buy back 6 billion. So that this frees them up now that they passed the stress test to buy back more shares. JP Morgan to buy back 29.1 billion. I mean, these are really big numbers. So this giving a lift. I didn't see anything for Ali. That's the one I'm long. That's not moving. That's the only financial that I'm long. But a lot of those names are getting a boost. So good for the financials. If you're long S&P, we were talking about a long S&P trade, for Friday. And I don't know how that's going to look with Apple down because Apple is a big weight. But I think that'll be offset by the financials. But let's besides the headlines, let's go over the a couple of the earnings. Nike looks like it's back to flat. I'll have to see what they say on their earnings call. Notice they took out that version point of control. Interesting that's usually how it works. It gravitates down there, especially on earnings. There wasn't another one below that, or at least that was close by. But just funny how that works. Sometimes they're really good places to go ahead and buy on the dip. And then PRGS software name is up to it hit $47 today, and they raised their guidance. And might be interesting to see what the software names do tomorrow with this name reporting such good numbers and such an upbeat move. Those software names got a little bit of a move back today. We went over that in the member webinar on Tuesday night, where we talked about how just the software names just might need a little bit of digestion, and I think I went over in last night's video too. I think I went through Twilio and I went through a couple other names, maybe Coupa Software, just showing that they had some really funky price action, in the beginning of the day. But you needed something like this, to kind of change things around. I think one of the things that I said last night too is sometimes it just takes one day for the momentum to kind of switch a little bit. So 3 or 4 different factors I think for the day that I was looking at and sent out on the private Twitter feed was the VIX, right? So the VIX, it's better when you turn the after hours action off here, but we were just seeing this grind, and this is something again that I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but these are important. I think important things, and really kind of gives me the signal for what to do for the day. But if we bring up the VIX first, and what I was emphasizing was that we were just it wasn't like we were very well bid in the VIX, but it just had an upward ascent to it for most of the week, and every time it looked like it was going to break down, it actually held. We talked about this. This was Tuesday. This was Wednesday, and then finally today we just we started to now take it down and go a little bit lower. So I think that's a good sign overall. Again, this is really super short-term stuff. To focus on. But if you're an active trader like I am, and I run an all-day trading room, so I'm looking for when the turn happens. Same thing for the S&P. This is one day. It kind of looked like the day started off like it was going to be many of the other days that we've seen in the last 2 weeks. Notice, just a 0.5% move, but we closed on the highs, believe it or not. And you could see, I guess, S&P futures are still kind of on the highs, and I think that's because of the stress test for the banks. But I think that's what we needed, just to kind of see this trend of I call it like malaise, where you do that pop on the open and then trickle down the rest of the day. Man, that was just brutal. I'd say the last couple weeks, even though a couple days where we had strong days where we gapped up. It's just frustrating to kind of see that price action over the day, and really difficult to kind of trade intraday too when that happens. The big story today was the small caps. Again, this Russell rebalance is going to really kind of create some whippy price action. But look at the small caps finish up 1.8% versus, so big outperformance. And I'll show you how that looks on my spreadsheet. But, nice to see this again, right where it looks like it's going to fade and break down. It bounces back. So, this market just, the whipsaw price action continues. This is just, the spreadsheet that I've been showing a lot is, percentage change after the open. And this gives you a better picture too. You could see for the indices that are in the top left, again, as always, the right column is the percentage change for the day. But what I'm concerned about is whether buyers are coming in to the day, throughout the day. And you certainly saw that in IWM up 1.6% for the day. Interesting, bonds and gold. We were looking at this at the end of the day. Bonds were catching a nice bid. They finished up. They were strong, up 70 basis points for the day. Sectors, I think more of a risk-on type tone. Notice that the green definitely outweighs the red. You didn't have a sector fall, more than 1% during the day, which is something new. Worst sector for the day was XLE and OIH, XOP, so energy. Defense names also lagged a little bit, and then utilities were a non-factor for the day. But look at the bios go up 2.3%. Dova had a study out which was positive, brought that name up along with a lot similar pin action, I would say, in some of those names. The solar names acted very well. First Solar was off to the races. First Solar was a chart that I mentioned, I believe, in the weekend video as showing some potential to it. The banks, even before the stress tests, were up. The Chinese internets, they rallied 2% on the day, 1.2%. So that's the price action. If we kind of drill down to some single names, FANG names continue to be a mixed bag, as I called them yesterday. Netflix was the star performer, but it seems to be one out of the group that is participating. Big pickup in the software names. There was a bunch of price target raises in Coupa Software. Finished the day up 6.3%. So if you chase this one, you did it. You got rewarded. But Twilio was up 2.5%. I put out a free video talking about how you can a way to play Twilio via options. Octave was good. Shop got going today. Remember, that name had 3 downgrades in 3 consecutive days. So nice there. Some other groups, RPD did pretty well today as well. That was named as a top pick or fresh pick, whatever the hell that means, at Baird. AYX also price target raise, I think, after hours. So here's the story. There was some really decent call buying in IQ. Congrats if you caught that trade today. So that was the next thing, next part of the video that I was going to talk about was just the call activity. So there's several ways of identifying when a trade, when a short-term trend changes, and what the momentum is for the day. Right? We talked about it in kind of change in tone in S&P, small caps, VIX. All these things are kind of coincident indicators. And then the call activity was all over the place today. A lot of action early on in names. The names, and I'll just walk through a couple names. Literally, I could spend about 20 minutes going through the option activity for the day, but I don't think that that's helpful to just know that that there was call activity in many names today. I think what's helpful to know is maybe where they were buying. So we've seen JD calls now 2 days in a row. There were some spreads that went up. So call buying in call buying in the Chinese internet names. We've also been seeing KWeb, some call activity there. You could see a little bit of puts there too, but mainly calls. FXI saw some calls today as well. So there's been some positioning definitely in China. And the way I look at it is, and I was quoted today on a CNBC article today, and what I said was, I think it represents pretty good risk to reward. Like if you're playing options, there's good sometimes there's good things about options. There's positives and there's negatives. One of the positives is you can really define your risk and say, hey, I'm going to risk 50 cents, and if something happens to happen with this G20 meeting, you could get some good risk, some good reward for that type of risk, right? And then also you could also get a preemptive move, which we got today too, and you don't actually have to hold over the weekend. If you put that trade on early, then you could actually just get the momentum, which we saw today in that group. What else? The semiconductors. The name that we're seeing the most option activity that I think is AMD. I think this still is a pretty good setup. We went over this in the pre-market activity, but I think this AMD looks pretty solid for a trade. Also sticking with the A's, we saw a nice ADI call buyer. This one also looks pretty good. I've talked about Xilinx. We saw Xilinx, a small call buyer, but again, sometimes the option activity will just kind of give you a hint to look. But look at Xilinx. I'm looking at that 130 or just shy of 130 Virgin point of control up here now that it's out of value. I think that's also, speaking of good risk to reward. If you put on something like a 120 130 call spread, I think that makes sense there to try to get that trade. So that's semis. Home builders, I think that Lennar reaction was, and I think the way that we're seeing the option activity was basically an overreaction. We saw a big Lennar call spread that went up today. We've seen some repeat activity in DHI, and a couple other names. And Some was the other name. I'm not going to go over the charts because I did that in the free video that I sent out this afternoon. If you guys like that, by the way, let me know. You can visit tribecatradegroup.com and sign up. Those are member videos, so we'll continue to try to put those out when we've got something very interesting going on for the day. What else? That was another group, and I think there was a third. I want to say that there was a third group. But a lot of China sensitive stuff. So the market just felt like it had some momentum to it. We'll see. For tomorrow, I think we could see some continuation for tomorrow is what I'm thinking. Once we kind of come out of this slumber, usually we do get a follow through day. So that's what I'm thinking. That's kind of how I'm positioned for tomorrow. I feel like like I said, I could go over option names for more and more time, but I think that's enough for now. I think those were the some of the main areas. Just a couple other one-offs. Dominion Energy has been seeing some call activity, even though it got walloped yesterday. I'm in this trade and losing some money in it. XME also saw some more calls today, a little bit more calls today. So just a couple other names. So it's not just all concentrated in those names, in those sectors, the semis, the Chinese internets, home builders. There's also a couple other, one-off areas. PGR saw some calls today. Insurance name that's come in decently from the highs. All right, so we'll leave it there, guys, and then I'll see you guys bright and early Friday morning for pre-market Tribeca Trade Group pre-market session. So have a great night. See you guys tomorrow.